Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 10 Part 90 based on novel. So let's start. The sky above Chaotic Demon Sea was magnificent. Bright colors had enveloped the entire Chaotic Demon Sea for an entire year. Even the sun and moon seemed to have lost their brilliance under this light. Extremely mystical fluctuations secretly pulsated as the light circulated. Chaotic Demon Sea was still overflowing with people. Their eyes were all focused on the sky, where a giant and incomparably gorgeous ice lotus was present. It was tightly shut while seemingly every color was emitted from it. It was the apex of beauty. Every gaze was anxiously glued to the gorgeous ice lotus. After the Ice Master had ignited her reincarnation and used all of her power to aid Lindong into reaching the ancestor stage, he became the final hope of the countless of lives in this world. Darkness was approaching in a pressuring manner from the far-away sky while their eyes were anxiously fixed on the brilliant ice lotus. 100,000 feet large crack was spreading in the void as extremely dense evil chi continued to surge from it. There was an ancient formation in front of the crack. However, this formation had already become extremely dim, and was clearly on the verge of breaking. Even some peak experts could vaguely sense that a certain figure of destruction was about to arrive. Countless individuals quietly looked at each other, and saw the unconcealable horror in each other's eyes. The Yimmo Emperor is about to descend. The Life-Death Master also lifted her head. Her small face gravely observed the changes in the distant void as she slowly remarked. But Lindong has not come out yet. The Flame Master glanced at the tightly shut brilliant ice lotus. Other than continuously emitting multicolored radiance, there was no other activity from it over the past month. They were even unable to detect Lindong's presence. We cannot care about such matters. Little junior sister ignited her reincarnation in order to create this chance. We must not waste it. A stern expression flashed across the Life-Death Master's eyes as she decisively said, "We will attack with all our strength once the Yimmo Emperor descends. We will stop him for as long as possible." The Flame Master and the others nodded with solemn faces. Regardless of the situation, they would do their best to help Lindong gain that urgently needed time. Rumble. Deep demonic thunder seemed to rumble from the distant void, as evil ripple began to truly invade this world. Countless pairs of eyes were anxiously focused on the sky. After which, they began to tremble. They had seen the seal outside the crack begin to burn. Black flames had glued themselves to the seal. The seal seemed to release a deafening noise at this moment. The final gate guarding the plane had finally reached the end of its mission. Crack. The seal cracked open, and ultimately completely disappeared. One could see a 1,000,000 feet large crack between the planes slowly squirming where the seal had vanished. It appeared like the large mouth of an evil demon that had started to gnaw at this world. The surging demonic chi was so viscous that it seemed to have almost become solid. It surged out from the crack between the planes. In an instant, the sun and moon lost their light. Bang! Demonic chi spread over the world. There seemed to be an extremely pair of evil eyes present within it. It indifferently swept over this world, seemingly attempting to search for the beautiful figure who had forced him back a month ago. The result of his search caused him to be somewhat surprised. He had discovered that particular presence appeared to have completely disappeared from this world, and even he could not detect it. The gaze sweeping over the world suddenly looked towards Chaotic Demon Sea, where brilliant light spread in the sky in the middle of an endless sea of people. That somewhat familiar light caused the evil eyes to tighten slightly. It was an extremely familiar and dangerous fluctuation. Humph! A cold and indifferent snort was emitted from the demonic chi. Soon after, the countless experts in Chaotic Demon Sea were shocked to see an extremely thick demonic chi light pillar suddenly rush downwards from the void. It tore through the sky and ruthlessly shot towards the brilliant ice lotus at the middle of the colorful light. Attack! The expressions of the 6 ancient masters drastically changed upon seeing this. With a stern cry, the 6 of them rushed forward and hovered in the air above the ice lotus. They powerfully slammed their own chests, and a mouthful of essence blood was spat out. Their expressions paled as 6 clusters of essence blood suddenly merged together. Bright light accompanied by a frightening ripple swept apart. Light spread, turning into a large ancient bell. The giant bell completely covered both them and the ice lotus. Demonic light penetrated space and arrived, heavily smashing onto the giant bell. A clear chime resounded across the sky. Circular sonic waves, which were visible to the naked eye, caused the surrounding experts to be blown backwards. Crack! The giant bell defense, which was formed from the full power of the 6 individuals, did not manage to achieve much of an effect. Many cracks swiftly spread over the huge bell. Finally, it emitted a loud bang and was completely blasted apart. 6 figures flew backwards when the large bell exploded, and a mouthful of fresh blood was coughed out. Their originally pale faces turned even paler, and their auras became extremely frail. Although they were already considered peak-level experts in this world, there was still far too big of a gap when compared with the Yimmo Emperor. Although they had suffered a serious injury, they ultimately managed to block this attack of the Yimmo Emperor. An icy expression seemed to flit across the evil eyes in the distant void, and demonic chi surged once again. Surging demonic chi arrived. Everyone could clearly feel the figure of destruction that had stepped across the plains was now swiftly approaching them. Viscous demonic chi once again shot forward, turning into a giant demonic finger that blasted apart the void and ruthlessly thrust towards the brilliant ice lotus. Evil symbols flickered at the demonic fingertips. Let's attack together. Countless strong individuals in chaotic demon sea saw the Yimmo Emperor's attack arrive once again. After feeling extremely terrified, all of them began to feel a great fury. Lindong was their final hope. If he was hindered or destroyed by the Yimmo Emperor here, it would mean that they would lose their last resistance. Such a scene must never appear. Scarlet rose in the eyes of the countless powerful individuals. Subsequently, roars rang out one after another, and tens of millions of yuan power pillars shot forth. The entire chaotic demon sea trembled wildly at this moment. Countless attacks crazily smashed onto the demonic finger, causing it to violently tremble. However, the far-off Yimmo Emperor clearly detected this situation. With a cold snort, the evil symbols on the demonic finger suddenly erupted and blocked all of the attacks. After which, it ruthlessly smashed towards the brilliant ice lotus without weakening. Ignite reincarnation and stop him. The eyes of the life-death master turned red upon seeing this. With a stern cry, both of her hands suddenly formed a seal. She was planning on directly igniting her reincarnation. They had no other choice at this moment. However, the space above the ice lotus suddenly distorted just as they were prepared to fight to their deaths, and a white-cloaked figure appeared from out of nowhere. The figure had an aloof demeanor. Her pretty face was covered in frost at this moment. She looked at the demonic finger headed her way, and clenched her hand, as a 3-foot-long sword appeared in a flash. Wielding the long sword, she ferociously slashed downwards. The sword slash did not give off any yuan power fluctuations. It was a strike that seemingly did not contain any power at all. Crack! However, this seemingly powerless slash directly passed through that terrifying demonic finger. After which, countless individuals were shocked to see that the demon finger had actually been slashed into 2. Clamor! The entire chaotic demon sea erupted into an uproar. Countless individuals were stunned as they looked at the fairy-like beauty in white. It was clear that they did not understand just who this person, who had suddenly appeared and seemed to be even stronger than the ancient masters, was. Lingqing. The ancient masters exclaimed. They were very startled when they saw this scene. Why has she become so strong? The spatial master asked in shock. He could sense that there was no yuan power in Lingqing's. However, they could detect a familiar ancient fluctuation from her. It is the power of the zenith. The life-death master answered in a solemn manner. She stared at the figure and muttered, "She is actually able to use the power of the zenith to such an extent? How terrifying!" In terms of understanding and control of the zenith, it is likely that even little junior sister is inferior. She has given up on every other kind of power, and focused on chasing after the power of the zenith. This boldness is something that even we cannot match. The Flame Master nodded and said, "This little fellow Lindong is really impressive. Both Lingqing and little junior sister are extremely talented ladies. Yet, both of them have fallen for this fellow. Impressive, impressive." The spatial master smacked his lips. His tone contained a great admiration. However, his words only made the others roll their eyes. "However, I'm afraid that even Lingqing cannot stop the Yimmo Emperor. The Yimmo Emperor has already pierced through the crack between the planes, and will soon arrive. At that time, his power strength would be truly unleashed." The Life-Death Master said in a worried voice. The Flame Master and the rest sighed. After which, they looked at the magnificent ice lotus. They could only hope that Lindong would be able to break out of the seal, and truly advance to the ancestor stage in the little time that remained. Otherwise, the world would truly fall into the hands of the Yimmo Emperor. The moment the demonic figure was sliced into two, an astonishing light suddenly erupted from the evil eyes in the distant void. He seemed to look past space as his gaze fell upon the beautiful white figure. His originally emotionless and indifferent voice seemed to have been shaken a little, and it seemed to contain a trace of joy. Has this power finally appeared once again? A gorgeous and alluring figure wearing a white dress stood in the sky above the chaotic demon sea. Meanwhile, she was holding a 3-feet-long sword in her hand. Her long black hair fell to her narrow waist. At this moment, as she stared intently at the distant void, there was a cold and rarely seen stern expression on her perfect and flawless face. This was because at that spot, a terrifying pressure was moving rapidly towards them. The Yimmo Emperor was about to arrive. Lingqing tightened the grip over her long sword, before she curled her red lips. Soon after, she lowered her head and glanced at the countless frightened and despairing eyes below. Then, she turned to look at that dazzling ice lotus. Promptly, the gentle emotion rose within her cold and clear eyes. "In the past, you have always been the one chasing after me. This time around, allow me to protect you." Following which, she increased the grip over her long sword, causing her delicate veins to protrude on her fair jade-like skin. Meanwhile, a determined glint flashed across her stunning face. Countless individuals were staring at that gorgeous figure standing in the sky. A gentle breeze blew over, causing her long hair to flutter with the wind. Her cold and elegant disposition was similar to that of a fairy, and left one mesmerized. Rumble. The low and deep devil thunder rumbling grew closer and closer. Following which, demonic aura, which looked just like storm clouds, descended from above the sky. Finally, in front of countless terrified pairs of eyes, they spread across the sky of the chaotic demon sea. Meanwhile, deep within the churning demonic aura, there seemed to be a pair of diabolical eyes looking coldly at the entire world. Finally, that pair of eyes paused on Lingqing's delicate and lovely figure. Such familiar strength! A cold and indifferent voice was slowly emitted from deep within the devil clouds. Moreover, it seemed as though that voice was that of a devil from the depths of hell. It was completely void of emotion. Instead, a terrifying strength, which caused the entire world to tremble in fear, radiated from it. Yimmo Emperor. The Life-Death Masters group stared at the devil clouds that covered the sky, with a pale expression on their faces. Meanwhile, they could faintly spot a demonic aura throne. Moreover, seated on that throne, was a devil godlike figure. However, no one could discern his looks. What a nostalgic place. However, it seems like that symbol ancestor fellow is no longer around. How unfortunate. A frightening pressure spread across the world as that voice slowly sounded. Promptly, he smirked. There seemed to be a hint of ridicule in his smirk. That fellow, we clearly had the same goal. Yet, he insisted on taking the so-called righteous path. Forget about it. In the end, I won. That man was laughing gently. Soon after, he turned his attention away from Lingqing and looked at the dazzling ice lotus instead. Immediately, his diabolical eyes, which were nested within the demon aura, hardened before he said, attempting to break into the ancestor stage. It seems like I have indeed underestimated the living beings in this world. However, I'm afraid there is no way I will give you such an opportunity. Bang! After his words sounded, the demonic aura in the sky suddenly surged. Immediately, viscous demonic aura swiftly gathered together, before it transformed into a huge cluster of black flames. The flames curled and rose. In fact, even the empty space itself continuously released a cracking sound, as if it was being grilled. Meanwhile, endless evil seemed to be coursing within these flames. The black flames wiggled, before they faintly transformed into the face of a ferocious ghost. After which, the devil flames whizzed forward before they headed straight for the dazzling ice lotus. Lingqing's delicate figure moved, before she instantly appeared in front of the dazzling ice lotus. Meanwhile, her stunning face was filled with an icy cold expression. Suddenly, waves of primal chaos light swept out from within her body. After the primal chaos light erupted, the entire world seemingly roared in unison, as endless amounts of natural power began to converge manically. Zenith, slay the devil! Lingqing used her jade-like hand to hold her 3-feet-long sword, before she swung it down. She did not employ any fancy techniques. However, as she swung her sword, it actually left a several 100,000 feet large deep gully on the chaotic demon sea below. A primal chaos sword glow whistled past, before it finally slashed against the frightening devil flames, which looked just like the face of a ghost. Immediately, the latter released a deafening miserable screech, and it was actually stopped by that ordinary-looking sword glow. However, as the devil flames raged, they continuously eroded the primal chaos light. You are actually able to make use of that strength till this extent. Indeed, it does seem to favor those that come from this world. The devil godlike figure nested deep within the devil cloud sighed emotionally after witnessing this scene. However, this is way lacking. After his voice sounded, the devil flames, which were in the shape of a ghost's face, suddenly released a piercing screech. Immediately, the devil flames soared in all directions, forcing the primal chaos sword glow to retreat continuously. Meanwhile, the primal chaos light also became increasingly dim. Lingqing was biting her red lips with the back of her teeth. Meanwhile, some sweat had appeared on her smooth forehead, while a pale expression flashed across her gorgeous face. Although she went down another path which allowed her to possess unique and formidable strength, there was hardly anything she could do when up against the Yimmo Emperor, who had descended personally into this world. Right now, his absolute and overpowering strength was something that she could not contend with. Hiss! The ferocious ghost-faced devil flames suddenly screeched. Then, it widened its huge mouth before it swallowed the primal chaos sword glow. Immediately, Lingqing's body shook before a trace of blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth. However, she forcefully endured it. Standing below, the Life-Death Masters group had a drastic change in their expressions when they saw this scene. It seems like they were indeed unable to stop him. You should be useful to me. Let me capture you first. Within the devil clouds, the devil godlike figure gave a faint smile. Following which, he extended his arm. Immediately, a humongous pale hand extended out from within the devil clouds before it attempted to grab Lingqing. As that pale hand descended, a whine erupted, as though the world was unable to bear that burden. The space around Lingqing was completely sealed at this moment, causing her to be stuck. However, even in a precarious situation like this, she did not panic. Instead, she merely inhaled a deep breath of air while the determination in her eyes grew denser. Lingqing gently placed her long hands together. After which, she formed an extremely ancient seal technique. As this seal was formed, everyone could hear a buzzing sound erupt from the entire world. Many primal chaos light rays shot out from different parts of the world. Finally, they enveloped Lingqing's delicate figure. Meanwhile, after those rays of light enveloped her body, several ancient lines actually appeared on her crystal-like skin. These lines were just like the lines of the world, divine yet natural. An intense primal chaos light began to surge out from within Lingqing's body. Meanwhile, her surrounding space, which had imprisoned her initially, began to loosen their grip. Finally, that large pale hand, which was attempting to grab her, was also blocked by the primal chaos light. However, this resistance was only a temporary solution. Immediately, the black devil veins on that large pale hand began to wiggle like dragons, before they began to force back the primal chaos light. Two frightening strengths clashed in the sky. However, everyone could tell that the primal chaos light was about to be extinguished. The Life-Death Masters group clenched their fists tightly, and they were prepared to act at any time. However, they knew that once they made a move, they had to ignite their reincarnation. Otherwise, there was no way they could contend with the Yimmo Emperor. Under that large pale hand, the primal chaos light became increasingly dim. In fact, it was pushed back continuously until it was only 100 feet away from Lingqing. When she saw this, she secretly sighed in her heart. Following which, without hesitation, her body, which was covered with ancient lines, began to turn scorching hot. Meanwhile, intense pain spread across her entire body. At this moment, the primal chaos light, which was being bitterly suppressed previously, began to push back at a frightening rate. In fact, it even pushed back that large pale hand until it began to tremble. Meanwhile, the crowd saw that the primal chaos light around Lingqing's body was becoming increasingly intense. After which, it appeared as though the entire world had begun to tremble. Is she planning to? When the ancient masters saw this scene, they were all shocked. Clearly, they realized that Lingqing was using a self-sacrificial method, similar to igniting one's reincarnation, to fight the Yimmo Emperor. Are we doomed to sacrifice ourselves one after another? Helplessness surged in their hearts as they glanced at each other. Lingqing slowly shut her eyes. At this moment, she could sense that her body had merged with the entire world. Therefore, as long as she activated the next step, she would be able to unleash her greatest strength and stop the Yimmo Emperor, buying some precious time for Lindong. Lindong, goodbye. A low and deep mutter sounded within Lingqing's heart. After which, her hand seal changed. However, just as she was about to unleash the strength within her body, a resplendent glow suddenly erupted in this world. Under the illumination of that resplendent glow, Lingqing suddenly felt that another frightening strength had forced her out of her current state, whereby she was merged with the world. Right after she was forced out from that state, a familiar scent greeted her. Following which, a powerful arm wrapped around her delicate waist before he pulled her into his embrace. Don't do that. I don't want to experience that pain for a second time, all right? He pulled her into his embrace and muttered. Meanwhile, there was pain in his voice which could not be concealed. At this moment, that familiar scent and voice caused even Lingqing's calm lake-like heart to tremble. She slowly lifted her head and looked at that face. In merely 1 month, his dark black eyes had become a lot older and deeper. In fact, it appeared as though he had went through thousands of reincarnations. Leave everything else to me. Behind Lindong, a dazzling light, which permeated the sky, was still flowing in all directions. Then, he looked at Lingqing before he gave a faint smile and said. Lingqing's delicate tensed-up body promptly relaxed, before she quickly nodded. Below them, the chaotic demon sea erupted into an uproar. Countless individuals stared at Lindong, who had finally showed up, before wild joy rose on their faces. Has their wait finally paid off? Did he succeed? The ancient masters stared at Lindong, before all their hearts shuddered. With shock in their eyes, they turned to look at each other, before they realized that while they were all in shock, there was unconcealable joy on their faces as well. This was because they realized that the fluctuation given off by Lindong's body was exactly the same as that of the symbol ancestor. Evidently, he had advanced to the ancestor stage. There is hope for this world. Standing in the sky, Lindong released Lingqing. Then, he lifted his head and looked deep into the devil clouds. Finally, a faint smile appeared as he said, "The great Yimmo Emperor has arrived. On behalf of every living being in this world, allow me to apologize for the wait." In the sky, the whistling demonic aura was now being suppressed by the dazzling light, and it subsequently became quieter. After which, a devil light descended, before a black figure gradually appeared within the devil light. Finally, that light disappeared before a human figure appeared in front of the eyes of countless individuals. That figure was that of a human. He was wearing black robes and he was fairly tall and handsome. However, Lindong's eyes narrowed gently when he saw his face. This was because he recognized that face. In fact, one could even say that that face was imprinted deep within his mind. This was because that face was in fact that of Lingqing's. Lin Langqian. Lingqing, Little Flame and rest, who knew about Lin Langqian, felt their hearts tremble when they saw this scene. Meanwhile, rich disbelief and shock surged within their eyes. Lin Langqian was actually the Yimmo Emperor? How is this possible? He is not Lin Langqian. Lindong's dark black eyes were staring at that familiar figure. However, there were hardly any fluctuations within his eyes. This was because he knew that the person standing in front of him merely had the same looks as Lin Langqian. Ha ha, this is only because I detected that your emotions had a violent reaction towards this man, the Yimmo Emperor smiled. Then, he looked at his own body before he smilingly said, it seems like using this appearance had quite a huge impact on all of you. Your appearance truly gives me the impulse to kill you for the second time. Lindong said in a faint voice. Although Lin Langqian had died in his hands back then, he did not mind killing him a second time. However, it's just as well. My cultivation journey began with Lin Langqian. Now that I have reached the pinnacle, I shall resolve all my grudges with you. This is despite the fact that the Lin Langqian standing in front of me is not the actual person. Lin Langqian laughed as he slowly sized up Lindong. Finally, he sighed and said, I never expected that someone else was actually able to reach the ancestor stage. It seems like I have miscalculated. The symbol ancestor had also left a hidden move. This world does not belong to you. You should return to where you came from. Lindong lowered his eyes before he said in an indifferent manner. I am able to sense your hatred towards me. It seems like you must have paid quite a hefty price in order to reach the ancestor stage. Are you willing to let me go just like this? Lin Langqian laughed and said. I am indeed a little unwilling. Lindong lifted his head and inhaled a deep breath of air. Then, he looked at the sky and there seemed to be the outline of a lovely young lady flashing at that spot. After which, it gradually disappeared. In order for me to reach this stage, I had to lose her. Therefore, if I do not kill you bastard, that would be truly upsetting. An icy cold ferocity slowly rose within Lindong's eyes. Soon after, everyone felt that the entire world was beginning to buzz and tremble. Following which, countless dazzling rays of light surged from all directions, before they gathered behind Lindong. In that case, you should stay. Lindong clenched his hand before 8 rays of light rushed over. After which, they circled around him. They were in fact the 8 great ancestral symbols. Soon after, many rays of light rushed over. They were the 9 great divine objects, which included the ancestor stone, great desolate tablet, etc. You have finally succeeded. A glow surfaced on the ancestor stone, before Yang looked at Lindong. When he realized that the pressure radiating from the latter was similar to that of the symbol ancestor, a pleased and satisfied expression rose within his eyes. Who could have imagined that this weak young man from Qingyang town would now stand at the apex of this world? In fact, since the beginning of time, only the symbol ancestor could hold a candle to him. I shall change all of you temporarily. Lindong smiled towards Yang. However, his smile seemed a little tragic. After which, he clenched his hand, before the 9 great divine objects began to connect with each other. Then, they seemingly transformed into an ancient 7-colored spear. Meanwhile, a terrifying force was flowing across the body of this spear. Currently, Lindong had advanced to the highest level in this world. In fact, his strength was no longer inferior to that of the symbol ancestor. Therefore, although the 9 great divine objects were all extremely powerful, they still merged and bent according to his will. Lindong was holding onto a 7-colored spear while the 8 ancestral symbols danced around him. A pressure which could tower over the world radiated from him. Immediately, this caused countless experts down in the chaotic demon sea to tremble in excitement. This was genuine hope. Only with such absolute strength could one finally stop the devil godlike Yimmo Emperor. Kill me? This was something that even the symbol ancestor failed to do. Therefore, what can you do even if you have reached his cultivation level? Lin Langqian smiled faintly as he looked at the 7-colored light surging in all directions behind Lindong. Bang! Lindong did not reply. He pointed his hands at Lingqing, before he suddenly clenched them. Promptly, the 100,000 feet empty space seemingly collapsed, before a frightening force which could even shatter a reincarnation stage expert who had passed 3 reincarnation tribulations, gushed forward. Lingqing placed his hands together, before black ink-like flames swept out from within his body and forcefully blocked the space-shattering pressurizing force. Ha ha, in that case, allow this emperor to experience how powerful the new ancestor really is. Lingqing laughed out loud. Following which, monstrous demonic aura surged behind him before it actually transformed into several million feet tall viscous demonic aura torrents. These torrents streaked across the sky in a grand and mighty fashion, before they meandered like large devil dragons and charged forward. Bang bang! Countless individuals were shocked when they saw that wherever these demonic aura torrents swept past, the space would collapse instantly, before numerous black cracks quickly spread across the sky. The demonic aura torrents finally arrived. Lindong gently stomped his foot, before dazzling light swept out from all directions. This dazzling light contained an endless amount of yuan power and mighty mental energy. In fact, it contained the strength of the entire world. Meanwhile, the 7-colored light transformed into a huge light disk that was millions of feet in size. That disk slowly rotated, allowing the demonic aura torrents to whiz over before they finally slammed ruthlessly against its surface. Boom boom. The world trembled at this moment. In fact, the word terrifying could hardly give justice to a fight like this. After all, just the frightening fluctuations given off by their attacks alone would cause a reincarnation stage expert's face to turn pale. Moreover, they knew that with their current strength, they would perish the instant they came into contact with their attacks. With a grave expression on their faces, the Life-Death Masters group stared at the both of them who were fighting it out in the sky. The strength of the Yimmo Emperor should be equivalent to an expert at the ancestor stage. Therefore, both Lindong and the Yimmo Emperor were at the same level, and a fight between them was definitely going to be an earth-shaking one. However, in the past, Teacher and the Yimmo Emperor fought bitterly as well. However, it's difficult for either party to emerge victorious since there is only a small gap between them. The Life-Death Master hesitated for a moment before speaking. That previous world war lasted for several years. Eventually, Teacher had no choice but to ignite his reincarnation in order to seal the Yimmo Emperor and the crack between the planes. When they heard her words, the Flame Master and the rest frowned tightly. Since this was what happened in the past, could it be that Lindong would also have to ignite his reincarnation in order to seal the Yimmo Emperor? In that case, wouldn't the situation enter into a cycle? That is not necessarily the case. It is possible for Lindong to kill the Yimmo Emperor. The Life-Death Master mused before she said solemnly. Do you mean, the top-ranked divine object? The Flame Masters group was startled. Then, they frowned and said, the top-ranked divine object, what exactly is it? Even they did not know much about the so-called top-ranked divine object. The only thing they knew was that even their teacher failed to gain control of that top-ranked divine object. Otherwise, the First World War would have ended with their complete victory. They turned to look at each other with a lost expression in their eyes. The top-ranked divine object was simply far too mysterious. The top-ranked divine object should be the zenith source of power. A soft voice suddenly appeared. The Life-Death Master turned her head before she saw Lingqing walking to her side. The zenith source of power? The Life-Death Masters group was startled. They knew about the power of the zenith. Moreover, the symbol ancestor had allowed them to sense it back then. However, only the Ice Master was able to do so successfully. Lingqing gently nodded her head. Meanwhile, a faint light was flowing within her pretty eyes. As if she was overlooking the entire world, she said, I am only able to sense it. However, it is impossible for me to control it. I'm afraid that only experts who have reached the ancestor stage are able to do so. Can Lindong do it? The Life-Death Master quickly asked. He has learned the zenith sensing art and sensed the zenith. I think that he should have deduced something by now, however, I do not know whether he can control it. After all, even the symbol ancestor failed to do so. An obscure emotion flashed across Lingqing's pretty eyes as she said. The Life-Death Masters group nodded. Currently, they were unable to provide any form of assistance to Lindong. Therefore, all they could do was to hope that Lindong was able to control the top-ranked divine object. Boom boom. Above the sky, there were two glowing figures that were both giving off a terrifying pressure. Meanwhile, both of them manipulated their frightening strength before they clashed ruthlessly. Furthermore, each time they clashed, the surrounding space would collapse rapidly. Wild gales swept across the world, while the sky and ground trembled. It felt like the apocalypse had arrived. After Lindong advanced to the ancestor stage, he could utilize the strength in this world as he pleased. Meanwhile, the Yimmo Emperor had an endless amount of demonic aura. Therefore, even though the both of them were fighting manically, neither of them showed any signs of weakness. Clang! The seven-colored spear was accompanied by dazzling light as it shot forward. Finally, it collided with the devil spear in a lightning-quick fashion. Immediately, the eyes of both parties turned stern and icy cold, before dazzling light and demonic aura surged wildly behind their backs. Roar! Dazzling light agglomerated manically behind Lindong, before it transformed into a 1,000,000 feet tall seven-colored dragon. That dragon meandered before it released a long roar, which reverberated through every corner of the world. Howl! Meanwhile, a monstrous devil figure had also appeared behind the Yimmo Emperor. Moreover, this devil figure was not lacking in size compared to the seven-colored giant dragon. It had numerous devil arms and there was a large diabolical eye in every devil palm. Meanwhile, there was a cold and cruel glint flashing on every single one of them. Boom! The seven-colored giant dragon and the devil figure charged forward violently. After which, both of them clashed in the sky, before an indescribable ripple swept forth. Instantly, huge 100,000 feet tall waves were formed on the chaotic demon sea below, before they spread in a rumbling fashion. Energy ripples swept from the spot where the both of them clashed. Their figures shook before both of them quickly retreated by thousands of feet. Moreover, every time their feet landed, the surrounding space would be shattered. The fight between the two of them was so terrifying that it could shake the world. However, a final victor could not be determined. Like I said, the best that an ultimate ancestor stage expert can do is to match up to me. In the past, there was nothing the symbol ancestor could do to this emperor. Therefore, even less needs to be said about you. The Yimmo Emperor gently jerked the devil spear in his hand, before his surrounding space shattered. Then, he spoke with a faint smile. Soon after, my Yimmo army will continuously enter this world through the crack between the planes. At that time, how will you possibly defend your world? When they heard this, the expression of countless experts below changed immediately. Then, they turned to look at the crack between the planes, that was located far in the distant void. At that spot, they saw that there was indeed an endless stream of demonic aura gushing through. Moreover, there seemed to be countless devil figures present within. The Life-Death Masters group had a grave expression on their faces. This was because they knew that once the Yimmo tribe arrives, the next world war will break out. At that time, they will definitely have to pay an extremely terrible price. Lindong also lifted his head and looked at the crack between the planes. Soon after, he looked at the Yimmo Emperor, who bore Lingqing's appearance, before he spoke in a soft and slow manner, though the symbol ancestor failed, it doesn't mean that I will. This is because this is our world. A strange glint flashed across the eyes of the Yimmo Emperor. Why don't you tell me why you came to our plane? It can't just be because you want to invade and massacre us, am I right? Lindong asked. The Yimmo Emperor slowly increased the grip over his devil spear. Meanwhile, a cold glint was flowing within his devil eyes. However, he showed no intentions of replying to Lindong's question. Instead, terrifying demonic aura swept out from within his body. It seems like you do not want to tell me why. However, even if you don't tell me, I know the reason why. Lindong smiled and said, You came here for a certain object, am I right? That thing that you are after should be the so-called top-ranked divine object in this plane, am I right? The Yimmo Emperor stared at Lindong. Finally, he gave a derisive laugh before he said, It seems like you are quite knowledgeable. In that case, do you know where the legendary symbol ancestor, the man whom you all deeply respect, came from? Lindong narrowed his eyes. The legendary symbol ancestor did not come from your world. Instead, he came from the same place as I did. Moreover, the reason why he came here was exactly the same as me. The Yimmo Emperor chuckled before he said, "Isn't it ironic? Your world savior actually had something else in mind. It's just that he chose a different path from me." The expressions of the ancient masters turned pale, while their bodies began to tremble violently. Clearly, they were greatly shocked by this news. I realized this after I advanced to the ancestor stage. The only person in the world who was still able to remain calm was Lindong. He stared at the Yimmo Emperor and said in a faint voice, "Do not compare yourself with the symbol ancestor. Though he might not be from our world, regardless of what motives he had, at the very least, we know that he once saved countless lives in this world. Just this fact alone is enough." The commotion in the chaotic demon sea gradually died down as countless individuals nodded in agreement. It didn't matter what the symbol ancestor's objective was. If it was not for him, this world would have already been destroyed. The Yimmo Emperor chuckled. However, it was clear that he did not wish to continue this conversation. Therefore, he stared at Lindong and said, "Currently, you are the hope of this world. Therefore, after I kill you, the entire world should sink into despair, am I right? Both of us are at the same level and it is indeed no mean feat to kill you. However, over the years where I was sealed, I have also considered this worst-case scenario. Back then, I was unwilling to pay the price to deal with the symbol ancestor. In the end, he turned the tables on me. However, I will not make the same mistake again. As long as I can suppress you for thousands of years, victory shall be mine." Following which, a strange expression flashed across the face of the Yimmo Emperor. Soon after, his body began to swell crazily. Within a short moment, he had turned into a 10,000-armed devil figure that towered over the world. Meanwhile, every one of his fearsome-looking devil arm was covered with numerous diabolical eyes. As these eyes slowly opened up, destructive light rays were promptly emitted. Bang bang bang. The instant the true form of the devil god body appeared, the numerous devil arms on his body exploded, before devil blood spurted forth in all directions. The instant the devil arms exploded, the diabolical devil eyes within these arms promptly shot forward. Following which, they floated above the Yimmo Emperor. When these numerous diabolical eyes blinked together, it was a frightening sight that caused one's scalp to turn numb. Devil tablet of no beginning. A low and deep voice, which was filled with dark chillness, reverberated through the sky. Next, numerous devil eyes began to merge before they faintly transformed into a 10 million feet tall black devil tablet. Meanwhile, countless devil eyes were carved into this devil tablet. When they blinked, everyone felt as though the energy in this world was being polluted. The moment this devil tablet was formed, piercing sharp screeches sounded from behind the crack between the planes. Subsequently, devil figures came gushing through the crack in all directions. It was the Yimmo tribe army. Moreover, the scale of this army was several times larger than that of the devil prison. They are truly out in force this time around. When the Life-Death Masters group saw this scene, their faces turned pale instantly. This was because the scale of this invasion even exceeds that of the Great World War during the ancient times. Clearly, this time around, the Yimmo tribe had mobilized their entire tribe. It seems like they were in dire straits this time around. The ancient masters clenched their fists. Regardless of whether they chose to admit it, the strength of the Yimmo tribe exceeded that of this world. Therefore, if the Yimmo tribe chose to mobilize their entire tribe and invade them, they would clearly be in a disadvantage. Tribute to the tablet. The Yimmo Emperor's dark, cold and cruel voice resounded again. Bang bang bang. However, right after his voice sounded, countless Yimmo, who had charged into this world, suddenly roared towards the sky. Following which, they exploded continuously, before their viscous black blood flowed continuously towards the devil tablet, which was packed with devil eyes. Within less than 10 breaths, countless Yimmo had already exploded. Meanwhile, the devil tablet was completely drenched with black blood and flesh. As the blood and flesh wiggled, together with the devil eyes, it created an exceptionally terrifying sight. Moreover, a dark and chilly fluctuation, which caused even the world to tremble, was slowly being emitted from within the Devil Tablet. This fluctuation even caused the Life-Death Master, Lingqing, and the rest to feel fearful, while dense uneasiness surged within their hearts. Lindong's expression also changed because of that terrifying Devil Tablet. Promptly, a thought passed through his mind before the 8 great ancestral symbols rushed out. Monstrous flames, cold ice, thunderbolts, and tens of thousands of black holes promptly appeared above the Yimmo Emperor. In fact, the strength of the 8 great ancestral symbols were pushed to their limits. Boom boom. However, up against the encirclement attack from the 8 great ancestral symbols, the numerous devil eyes on the Devil Tablet released monstrous demonic aura light rays, which managed to force the ancestral symbols to retreat. Meanwhile, demonic aura lingered around them and the ancestral symbols even dimmed slightly. This emperor will destroy his true body and sacrifice half of his tribe in return for suppressing you today. Currently, the true body of the Yimmo Emperor was only left with 2 arms. Meanwhile, he was staring at Lindong viciously with his devil eyes. This was because even for someone like him, he had to recuperate for several millennia after paying a price like this. However, he knew that he would have accomplished his objective as long as he was able to get rid of Lindong. After all, as long as he could obtain that item, he would grow stronger than before. Devil Tablet of No Beginning, 10,000 Devil Seal. A low and deep roar rumbled and reverberated through the sky. Following which, the 10 million feet tall Devil Tablet vanished before it appeared above Lindong in a flash. Next, numerous devil light rays swept down and imprisoned the entire world. Then, a fearsome-looking scarlet-red devil seal materialized under the Devil Tablet, before it subsequently pressed down towards Lindong in a rumbling fashion. Down in the chaotic Demon Sea, every sea region within a 100,000-mile radius was forcefully torn apart. The world cracked as piercing wailing rang out. It was as though the world could not handle this burden. With a solemn expression on his face, Lindong shot forward together with the 7-colored spear in his hand. The 8 great ancestral symbols immediately followed behind. Just like large dragons, they smashed at the falling Devil Tablet. Bang bang. However, when the 7-colored spear made contact with the Devil Tablet, it released a sharp cry before it dimmed immediately. Subsequently, it blew apart and transformed back into the 9 great divine objects. Meanwhile, the 8 great ancestral symbols had also suffered huge damage. In fact, cracks had actually appeared on these ancient symbols. Lindong, be careful. The Yimmo Emperor wants to suppress you. Yang had a pale expression on his face as he appeared in a flash and cried out loud. Clearly, after the Yimmo Emperor suffered a huge loss in the past, he was planning to seize the initiative this time around. Moreover, the strength that came from sacrificing his true body and half his tribe was simply far too terrifying. When they saw this scene, countless experts in the chaotic Demon Sea trembled violently, while rich horror surged in their eyes. After all, if Lindong failed, was there anyone else in this world who could stop the Yimmo Emperor? The ancient masters also clenched their hands tightly. Currently, the Yimmo Emperor looked even more frightening and maniacal compared to before. Countless pairs of eyes whistled over from all directions before they sealed Lindong's surroundings. Following which, that fearsome-looking scarlet-red devil seal also whizzed over. Moreover, even Lindong felt severely endangered from the energy flowing on this seal. In fact, even though he had advanced to the ancestor stage, there was likely no way he could resist such strength. After all, the Yimmo Emperor had directly paid a hefty price in order to kill him. However, by doing so, the Yimmo Emperor had also suffered terrible injuries, which he could not easily recover from. Despite so, there was still no one else in this world who was able to stop him. However, could one use normal means to block an all-out attack from the Yimmo Emperor? It is impossible for Lindong to block this attack unless he ignites his reincarnation. The Life-Death Masters group looked at the situation in the sky before their hearts sunk. Standing in the sky, Lindong looked at the Devil Tablet that was attempting to suppress him, before he actually shut his eyes. This was because he knew that if he wanted to stop the threat from the Yimmo tribe, he had to kill the Yimmo Emperor and not merely seal the latter. However, even though he had advanced to the ancestor stage, it was still an extremely challenging task to kill the Yimmo Emperor. That's unless he controlled the top-ranked divine object. Although Lindong did not have an in-depth knowledge regarding the top-ranked divine object, he had advanced to the ancestor stage. Therefore, it was possible for him to vaguely detect something. Moreover, it was a familiar sensation. It was the zenith. What did the zenith mean? At this moment, Lindong's consciousness seemed to have merged with the world, as he could arrive anywhere in this world with just a single thought. Countless mountains, rivers, and plains flashed across his mind. Finally, all of them returned to the void. What was the zenith? All of you, protect me. I will assist him. Lingqing appeared to have realized something as well, as she suddenly commanded the Life-Death Masters group. After which, she shut her pretty eyes immediately before her consciousness merged with the world. Lindong's mind was in deep thought. While he was probing, all of a sudden, he felt that a gentle consciousness had appeared. After which, that consciousness drifted towards him. Meanwhile, there were rich emotions within. This consciousness originated from Lingqing's mind. I will take you to the zenith. Lingqing's voice sounded from within that consciousness. Meanwhile, there was a hint of embarrassment in her voice. Subsequently, Lindong realized that the gentle consciousness had in fact merged together with his. The moment both their consciousness merged, both of them trembled violently. This was a spiritual merger, whereby they both had pieces of each other in their respective minds. After their consciousness merged, the both of them became absent-minded for a moment. After which, their consciousness drifted towards the void. Meanwhile, the entire world was reflected within their consciousness. Their consciousness overlooked the entire world. Subsequently, primal chaos light appeared within the void. It was the location of the zenith, which he had sensed before. Both their consciousness entered the primal chaos. This time around, the stinging pain and powerful repulsive force that appeared the previous time had disappeared completely. Instead, Lindong's consciousness began to gather together, before his body appeared within the primal chaos. Following which, Lingqing also appeared beside him. However, there was a flush on her beautiful and pale face. This place is the so-called zenith, can you detect it? Lingqing softly said. Lindong shut his eyes before his mind seemingly merged with the primal chaos. At that spot, he could sense the consciousness of a living being. However, it had an extremely simple mind, and it was almost like the mind of a baby. It was the dimension fetus. A thought flashed across Lindong's mind. At this moment, he came to a sudden comprehension. The so-called zenith was the spirit of this dimension, and it was the ultimate existence in this world. However, that existence was not capable of thought. Nevertheless, it was the strongest living being in this world. The so-called zenith power originated from it. Moreover, the Yimmo Emperor and the symbol ancestor came because of it. This was because as long as one obtained it, one would become the dimension master and possess the strength of the entire dimension. However, since they were not born in this world, there was always going to be a gap between them and the dimension fetus. In the past, the symbol ancestor detected it. However, when he made contact with it, he failed to gain control of it. It is indeed worthy of being crowned as the top-ranked divine object in this world. Lindong's consciousness slowly approached the dimension fetus. Meanwhile, the latter seemed to have detected his presence as well. Promptly, primal chaos light surged before it vanished. When Lindong saw that it was futile to give chase, his footsteps stopped. Then, he lifted his head before he looked at the primal chaos. Next, he slowly spread both his arms, before his deep and mighty voice resounded across the primal chaos. Follow me. I was born and raised here. From today onwards, I will protect this plane. Protect it. Protect. A low and deep voice reverberated through the primal chaos, before it echoed continuously. Lindong looked at the deepest part of the primal chaos. However, he did not take the initiative to approach it. Nonetheless, the determination deep within his eyes remained unbudging. His determination could move anyone. His eyes were staring at the deepest part of the primal chaos. However, nothing was happening at that spot. A long while later, right after Lingqing gave a gentle sigh, a dazzling light suddenly swept forward before the entire primal chaos began to tremble violently. Primal chaos light began to agglomerate in front of Lindong, before it transformed into a palm-sized spiritual fetus. That spiritual fetus gently approached Lindong, before it finally landed in his palm. The instant Lindong touched the dimension fetus, a mysterious sensation rose from deep within his heart. In fact, it felt as though he had become the master of this dimension. This meant that he had absolute control over this dimension. The master of this dimension. In the sky above the chaotic demon sea, while he was being stared at by countless shocked-filled eyes, the devil tablet finally slammed ruthlessly against Lindong's body. Following which, a brutal expression flashed across the Yimmo Emperor's face. This plane was finally his. However, the instant the brutal expression appeared on his face, he saw that 100,000 feet large primal chaos-like curtain had suddenly swept out from beneath the devil tablet. Immediately, the tablet, which was about to suppress Lindong, froze at this moment. This world ultimately belongs to us and you are not qualified to act as you please, Yimmo Emperor. A somewhat hoarse voice slowly sounded from beneath the devil tablet. At that spot, a figure had slowly lifted his head before he looked at the devil tablet, which was in close proximity to him. After which, he slowly extended his hand before he made contact with it. Therefore, shatter. A sharp glint suddenly erupted within Lindong's eyes. Following which, a muffled sound, which resembled that of a heartbeat, reverberated through every corner of this world. In fact, it seemed as though this heartbeat sound was created by gathering the heartbeat of every living being in this world. Bang bang bang. On the devil tablet, countless evil eyes exploded one after another. Meanwhile, miserable screeches were also emitted continuously from the devil tablet. Countless individuals were staring in shock at this sudden unexpected development. Bang! Cracks emerged on the tablet before it finally blew apart. Following which, the Yimmo Emperor's body also trembled violently. When he saw this scene, a trace of fear suddenly surged within his eyes. Dimension strength. You've managed to gain control of the dimension fetus? The Yimmo Emperor's furious roar echoed across this world. Moreover, everyone could tell that there was a trace of shock within his voice. Countless onlookers lifted their heads to look at the sky, only to see a skinny figure slowly walking out from within the primal chaos light. Moreover, with each footstep, the world seemingly roared in unison. An authoritative pressure which could not be described with words, radiated from his body. Thanks to this divine might, countless individuals, who were located at the surface of the ocean down below, actually fell to their knees. Meanwhile, there was a fervent and reverent expression in their eyes as they stared at that figure. In fact, it looked as though they were subjects who had saw their emperor. His might towered over the entire world. Martial ancestor. No one knew who had uttered these words. However, his voice began to spread rapidly. In the next moment, countless voices reverberated through the world. Martial ancestor, protect the world. Standing in the sky, as that figure slowly walked forward, the evil demonic aura, which had once permeated the sky, was actually being pushed back. It looked as though the entire plane was resisting it. The Yimmo Emperor true body was also forced to step back. In fact, he looked rather miserable as he was being pressured by that aura. This dimension, as a dimension master finally appeared, the Yimmo Emperor clenched his teeth. Meanwhile, the fury and dissatisfaction in his eyes seemed to have eroded his logical mind. After all, he had paid a massive price and was even sealed by the symbol ancestor for so many years. However, who could have imagined that Lindong would wound up benefiting instead, and become the dimension master of this dimension? With a stern expression on his face, Lindong stared at the Yimmo Emperor. Subsequently, he turned and faced the crack between the planes. Then, he swung his hand before the primal chaos-like curtain swept forward. Soon after, the Yimmo Emperor was shocked when he realized that the crack between the planes was actually being slowly mended. The ability to repair the dimension was a power that belonged exclusively to its dimension master. Retreat! The expression in the eyes of the Yimmo Emperor was in flux. Finally, he released an angry roar. Following which, his Yimmo army began to flee upon hearing this. Clearly, they realized that something was amiss. Like I said, since you guys have came all the way here, you can stay here forever. Since the symbol ancestor was unable to kill you, I shall do it on his behalf. Lindong spoke in an indifferent manner. Meanwhile, his words were filled with absolute authority. In fact, it seemed as though the entire world resonated with him. Subsequently, he extended his hand before endless primal chaos light gushed forward. Then, it transformed into an incredibly huge light fetus above the Yimmo Emperor. The light fetus was even bobbing gently. However, each time it bobbed, the hearts of every living being in this world would jump as well. Dimension fetus? When the Yimmo Emperor saw that glowing fetus, dense greed and shock flashed across his eyes. Soon after, he gritted his teeth, while his face was filled with dissatisfaction. Nonetheless, he was a decisive individual. Since Lindong had become the Dimension Master, he knew that he was no match for him. With this thought in mind, the body of the Yimmo Emperor shot forward as he attempted to escape from the crack between the planes before it was fully mended. However, his body had only just moved before he shockingly realized that the world was rotating. In fact, the space where he was located seemed to have been shifted. Only after he recovered his senses, did he realize that he was already within the Dimension fetus. Lindong, let me go. I swear that I will never invade your dimension ever again. The Yimmo Emperor hurriedly cried out. At this moment, he finally felt that his life was in danger. In fact, this endangered sensation was something that he did not experience even when the symbol ancestor ignited his reincarnation. Lindong stared at him coldly. In order to deal with you, I lost the most important person in my life. Therefore, just expelling you alone cannot ease the fury in my heart. Dimension purification, return to the void. A low voice was emitted from Lindong's mouth. It was like endless thunder as it reverberated through the sky. Soon after, an endless light suddenly erupted from within the Dimension fetus. Following which, that light shone on the body of the Yimmo Emperor, before he immediately released a miserable screech. Finally, his massive body shrunk rapidly, while the viscous demonic aura around him disappeared at a frightening rate. Your invasion has brought numerous calamities to this world. Now, you shall pay with your life. Lindong suddenly clenched his hand, before the enormous Dimension fetus shrunk rapidly. Finally, it turned into the size of a palm before it slowly landed in Lindong's hand. Meanwhile, it was still possible to see a tiny black figure in the middle of the light fetus. After all, the Yimmo Emperor had a sturdy life force, and even with the strength of the Dimension fetus, it would take hundreds of years in order to completely purify him. However, Lindong could afford to wait. After all, from today onwards, there was no way the Yimmo Emperor could ever make a comeback. The Yimmo scourge, which had wreaked havoc in this world for thousands of years, was finally exterminated today. When they saw this scene, countless individuals were so excited that their bodies began to tremble. The destroyer, who had once caused them to sink into despair, was finally subdued. At the same time, there was unrestrained joy on the Life-Death Master Group's faces. After all, they had waited for this day for a very long time. We will never forget how the martial ancestor saved the world. The rebirth after despair caused countless individuals to be so excited that hot tears flooded their eyes. In fact, countless individuals were trembling as they knelt down. Meanwhile, excited and grateful voices gathered together, before they resounded through the world. Lindong looked at the land, which was covered with scars. Then, he slowly lifted his head and heard the respectful voices that were rumbling across the sky. Next, he turned his head and looked at the crack between the planes, which was slowly mending. Meanwhile, it looked as though there was a beautiful figure with a warm smile slowly disappearing at that spot. Lindong clenched his hands. His eyes were filled with unwavering determination as he said, I have fulfilled your promise with the symbol ancestor. Next, it's time for me to fulfill my promise to you. Regardless of where you are, I will definitely bring you back. This video will end here.